Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a journey into a truly audacious idea.
It really is.
It's one that directly challenges our, ingrained assumptions about progress, technology, and humanity's future. Think for a moment about the stories we tell ourselves about what's next. Whether it's the gleaming cities of science fiction or maybe the stark, resource-depleted worlds of dystopian narratives.
No, those are common tropes.
What vision usually dominates? Is it one of boundless opportunity for all, or is it, a more fractured, divided existence?
Often the latter, it seems.
Far too often, we see incredible technological leaps in these imagined futures, but somehow humanity still seems mired in, cycles of division, scarcity, and conflict.
Right. The tech advances, but the social structures, not so much.
It's a striking duality, isn't it? Utopian dreams for a few, kind of tinged with dystopian anxieties for the many.
A very common theme.
Our deep dive today confronts an argument that suggests this very idea of progress might be fundamentally flawed, potentially leading us towards what the author describes as a nightmare on an apocalyptic scale.
Strong words.
Yeah, this isn't about minor tweaks to our current systems. It calls for, and I'm quoting here, drastic measures for drastic times.
So not just business as usual.
Not at all. The source material guiding us is a fascinating essay titled Rethink Progress.
Okay.
Our mission today is to unpack its central argument, a radical proposal for how humanity can secure its future, address pressing global challenges, and fundamentally redefine its relationship with energy.
That's a big scope.
It is. It's a vision that might seem out of a sci-fi novel itself, yet it claims to be grounded in a profound pragmatism.
Interesting combination.
So let's dive into the specifics. The author begins by challenging the very narratives we consume about the future, particularly in science fiction.
Right.
What stands out to you about their critique of these popular visions?
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is how the author suggests this isn't just a matter of, creative license or individual writers' choices, but perhaps it's a reflection of a fading empire of the mind, a set of expected beliefs about the future, rather than a truly desired one.
Like we're stuck in a thought pattern.
Exactly. They meticulously point out how many sci-fi narratives are trapped in this rigid, dualistic framework, consistently depicting a future starkly divided, rich and poor, powerful and weak, haves and have-nots.
Right.
It's almost as if our collective imagination can't break free from these 19th century industrial age power dynamics.
Right, and they even reference a specific film, Elysium, with Matt Damon and Jodie Foster as a prime example.
Yeah, I remember that one.
You have this visually stunning, technologically advanced, almost Eden-like habitat orbiting Earth.
Right, for the elites.
Reserved exclusively for the ultra-wealthy and powerful. Meanwhile, Earth itself is depicted as this overcrowded, resource-scarce wasteland where the majority of humanity struggles in squalor.
It's that stark contrast again.
It's the quintessential elitist versus hero dynamic, a narrative thread woven through so much of our popular culture.
Precisely. And the author questions why popular fiction, despite its capacity for, boundless imagination, seems stuck in 19th century ideological thinking.
Yeah, why keep telling that story?
Perpetuating this dualist utopia versus apocalypse theme. They argue that our shared human experience, especially since the fall of communism and the declared victory of liberal democratic ideology, has actually shown us that these universal utopian claims often give way to, good old multifaceted, non-utopian common sense human nature.
Meaning reality is messier.
Exactly. The global interconnectedness of our modern world, ironically, seems to have created a space where pure human nature, with all its complexities, contradictions, and messy realities, can really emerge. So the author asks, why do we keep telling ourselves stories that reinforce this rigid dualism if it doesn't really align with the evolving reality of our globalized human experience?
That's a truly powerful point. It challenges us to reflect on whether our cultural narratives are truly guiding us forward or just echoing outdated societal structures.
Right. Are they reflecting reality or shaping a limited view of it?
And this leads directly into the author's critique of what they call the weak hero conundrum.
Yes, the hero problem.
They lament how often sci-fi heroes are depicted as shallow, seemingly only capable of saving, quote, a single and very personal love relationship.
Or just making a small dent.
Or merely disrupting the status quo on the surface, with the underlying expectation that the evil empire will ultimately endure. It feels like a very limited vision of human agency, doesn't it?
It really does.
Almost as if our potential for collective transformation is implicitly denied.
It absolutely does. The author describes it as a single organism only saving itself in the closest thing it loves,
Very narrow focus.
which inherently misses the profound potential for a broader, more collective consciousness and action. Instead of grand systemic change, we get these localized personal triumphs.
That leave the larger power structures intact. Yeah.
The author yearns for stories that depict a real ecosystem of abundant species of human communities.
An ecosystem of communities. What does that look like?
Well, these wouldn't be idealized, flawless utopias, let's be clear.
Okay.
But they would be loosely networked, politically modern, and technologically advanced. And critically, despite their own internal rich-poor dynamics, because, human nature is always complex,
Right. No perfect society.
they would inherently care for each other. This is a significant departure from the competitive zero-sum game often portrayed.
This ecosystem of communities sounds vastly different from what we typically see in our imagined futures.
It's a richer picture.
The author envisions a more complex, interconnected reality, a body politic of families and communities, and a relationship ecosystem where elites, specialists, technicians, artists,
Everyone plays a part.
they all act as smaller collections of various species of natural unities. It's about how these fundamental human connections, familial, ethnic, religious, cultural, aesthetic, and economic commitments, find expression within these networks. The emphasis shifts from individual heroics to systemic, compassionate interaction.
And crucially, the author emphasizes interactions that, even if they initially manifest as good or bad, contain an inherent potential to be healed and sanctified.
Healed and sanctified. How so?
Allowing negative experiences to be transcended into something positive, or at least guiding towards the highest possible human experience. This proposes a new redeeming state of nature
Okay.
as a much better state of progress than the tired, dualistic state still being promoted as part of a forced identity of controlling or being controlled.
So the core insight here, if I'm understanding correctly, is that true progress isn't about eradicating evil or perfecting humanity,
Right. That's not the goal.
but about consciously aligning with life's inherent, unseen, and continuous capacity for self-correction and healing.
Exactly. It suggests our biggest failures might stem from fighting this natural tendency rather than working with it.
That's a profound point. It's almost a spiritual or philosophical underpinning to their vision.
It has that quality, yes.
Are we, as a society, programmed to think of progress in purely mechanistic amoral power relationships, ignoring life's intrinsic healing potential and its abundance of life forms?
That's the challenge being posed.
The author really drives this home, contrasting the cold, detached, mechanistic superiority, often attributed to survival specialists like viruses and bacteria, with our own amazing ability of consciousness and conscious cooperation of frail, less adapted for survival, complex organisms like us.
Our unique strength.
It's a powerful reminder that despite our apparent fragility, we have inherent antibodies and life-preserving systems working constantly to overcome moral pathogens and move towards healing and flourishing.
Right. These systems operate below the surface.
It challenges the very notion that struggle and conflict are the primary drivers of evolution.
Yeah, it offers a different perspective.
The author posits that the fundamental engine of progress is this underlying restorative force, and our task is maybe to just remove the obstacles to its work.
Indeed. It's a rejection of the idea that fear, destruction, and death are the primary or even acceptable drivers of progress.
A rejection of the might makes right view of progress.
Exactly. The author suggests that despite all our imperfections and the undeniable presence of destructive forces, there's an inherent, continuously active system in life that identifies, suppresses, and removes evils, always working towards abundance and conscious cooperation.
It's a powerful and, frankly, quite optimistic counter-narrative to the prevailing dystopian visions we see so often.
Definitely offers a different lens.
So, with this foundational shift in how we view progress and human nature, what does this all mean for how we even begin to think about fixing our most immense global challenges?
Right, the practical application.
Especially something as fundamental as our energy needs, it sounds like we need to reframe the problem entirely before we even get to solutions.
That's precisely where the author pivots. moving from that critique of our existing narratives
Mm-hmm.
to laying a pragmatic, yet still profoundly radical foundation for a new way forward. They acknowledge the world as it is, with all its imperfections, but frame them within this larger context of life's inherent healing potential.
Okay, this is where it gets truly fascinating. The author brings in a historical figure, Niccolo Machiavelli.
Ah, Machiavelli. Always controversial.
But with a surprising twist, they borrow his guiding principle to take the world as it is,
Pragmatism first.
which they acknowledge is a bona fide aspect and fundamental rule of thumb used by political scientists, recognizing the practical need for realism.
You have to start with reality.
But then they immediately express deep misgivings about Machiavelli's underlying philosophy.
Okay, so not a full endorsement.
No, it's a pragmatic acceptance of reality without endorsing a cynical worldview.
What's fascinating here is the author's stark moral judgment of Machiavelli. They see him as an evil worshiper of death for power's sake,
Wow, strong language again.
akin to his modern disciples who fixate on finding ways to use the power of evils. This is a critical distinction they're making.
So they separate the pragmatism from the perceived morality.
Exactly. They explicitly criticize Machiavelli for promoting deceit and corruption while, in the author's view, underplaying the need to acknowledge and act according to the continuous and active systems and natural behaviors that are identifying, suppressing, and removing evils, just like antibodies, without us even knowing.
So Machiavelli missed the positive forces.
They're arguing that life itself has these self-correcting mechanisms that he overlooked or downplayed in favor of manipulation.
So on one hand, they say, let's be realistic. Take the world as it is with all its messiness, illness, and predators. Don't ignore the difficult truths.
You have to acknowledge the negative.
But on the other hand, they argue that we absolutely shouldn't forget life's inherent healing and nurturing as the core reality of life and abundance.
Don't let the negative obscure the positive potential.
They fundamentally reject the idea that death, fear, or conflict, as often presented since the 19th century, is the power of progress.
Right, that's not the engine.
Instead, it's life's capacity for overcoming challenges.
So, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is saying we must be realistic about humanity's imperfections, the messiness, illness, and predators that are undeniably part of our existence.
Yeah, can't ignore that.
But we must not let that overshadow life's inherent persistent capacity for healing and cooperation.
A balanced view.
It's a call to acknowledge the negative aspects of human nature without being consumed by them, and to always recognize the positive, life-sustaining systems that are continuously at work, even unseen.
Okay.
This nuanced pragmatism allows them to propose an idea that, they argue, fits into our messy world, something humans can genuinely do right now.
Because we already do similar things.
Because we're already engaged in similar large-scale cooperative efforts in other domains. It's not about ignoring reality, but about seeing the fuller, more hopeful reality within it.
With that guiding principle, established realism tempered by an understanding of life's inherent healing nature, the author introduces their core assumption. And it's a truly bold one.
Okay, let's hear it.
Quote, in the nuclear energy age we live in today, no morally defensible argument supports any diminishing access to the energy necessary for all current and future human progress.
Wow, that's a powerful and direct statement. No diminishing access.
It is indeed a concentrated statement, one that forms the bedrock of their entire proposal.
So energy access is a moral issue for them.
Absolutely. The author considers any argument to reduce energy access morally indefensible because they directly link such reduction to misery and destruction.
A direct causal link.
They highlight the enormous scale of energy that is and will be required. And this isn't just for future growth.
Not just luxuries.
No, it's just to mitigate the most conservative estimates of the expected environmental challenges caused by climate change, alongside existing developmental challenges of a changing global population.
So energy for survival and adaptation, basically.
They're talking about the energy needed to lift billions out of poverty, ensure clean water, provide education, adapt to a changing climate, all at the same time.
The scale is immense when you think about it like that.
So they're directly challenging conventional wisdom here, stating unequivocally that if we do not have an extreme increase in overall energy availability,
Extreme increase.
we will not be able to achieve climate change or developmental objectives. This isn't a plea for marginal improvements, it's a call for an exponential leap.
Going far beyond current targets.
They really want the listener, you out there, to grasp the sheer daunting scale of this energy requirement.
Yes, they encourage you, the listener, to dilute this statement with your own insights, to try and imagine the quantitative value of resources and energy needed for these global challenges.
Right, what does it actually take?
Think about what it would truly take to desalinate enough water for arid regions, or to power global carbon capture technologies, or to build resilient infrastructure for billions.
The numbers must be astronomical.
The author pushes us to consider that our current energy frameworks are not just insufficient for future progress, but even for basic mitigation and development today.
So the problem is fundamentally misunderstood.
It fundamentally redefines the scope of the problem. Energy scarcity isn't just an economic issue, it's a moral one, a barrier to human flourishing and planetary stewardship.
And it's this foundational assumption, this almost uncompromising stance on the necessity of abundant energy that leads directly into what the author calls the powerful simplicity of the core idea.
Okay, the core idea itself.
So we've dissected the author's critique of current narratives and their radical stance on energy. This sets the stage for a truly audacious core idea.
The solution part.
One that takes that fundamental assumption about energy and turns it into a tangible, almost sci-fi-esque solution. The core idea is strikingly simple.
Simplicity can be powerful.
Quote, completely isolate all the supply of heat and electrical energy from all other human activities.
Isolate the supply. Completely.
Wow. What's fascinating here is the sheer audacity and profound simplicity of this proposal. It's not just about finding a new energy source.
No, it's structural.
It's a fundamental reordering of how energy interacts with society itself. The most natural analogy the author uses is how the sun is isolated at the center of our solar system,
The sun analogy.
providing uninterrupted, abundant energy without directly participating in the biological and geological processes it powers on Earth.
Okay, I see the parallel.
In this vision, humanity would create its own artificial sun, metaphorically speaking, a source of energy completely distinct from natural processes.
A human-made, isolated energy source.
And the purpose of this isolation is multifaceted and deeply strategic. First, it's to isolate our energy supply from the ecosystem of normal human economic activities.
Taking it out of the market fluctuation.
This means divorcing energy from market speculation, political manipulation, and the forces of supply and demand that often drive conflict and inequality.
Okay, that's one layer.
Second, and equally critical, is to isolate human energy needs from the needs of the biosphere at large to the greatest extent possible.
Protecting nature by separating our energy needs.
Exactly. This separation allows the sun's natural energy to sustain the biosphere's intricate ecosystems, while humanity uses its own independent, economically isolated, and newly created energy supply for all its activities, hopes, dreams.
In dealing with our impact.
And crucially, to proactively manage its past, current, and future reckless impact on the biosphere. It's like humanity getting its own independent, infinitely scalable power grid, entirely separate from nature's delicate balance.
Exactly. It's a grand vision of self-sufficiency for human needs, freeing up nature's resources to sustain itself, and giving humanity the unprecedented power to address its own environmental footprint, to clean up past damage and build a sustainable future without constraints related to energy access or cost.
It sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it?
It shifts our relationship with nature from one of, extraction and competition for resources to one of stewardship and independent innovation.
Okay.
This isolation isn't about detachment from environmental responsibility, but about empowering humanity to fulfill that responsibility without compromise.
This sounds monumental. So how does the author propose we even begin to implement something so radical and foundational?
The how-to.
They lay out a detailed blueprint, a 12-point plan for what they call the Independent Energy Supply Community of Trust, or ISCA.
ISCA. Okay, got it.
Let's dive into these foundational steps, starting with the very first one.
Point 1. It's the creation of this very entity, the ISCA.
The organization itself.
It would be a globally networked community of trusted enterprises with the absolutely sole purpose of supplying abundant proto-commodity, new generation, clean and baseload heat and electrical energy.
Proto-commodity. We'll need to unpack that.
Definitely. And this supply would come through independent, economically isolated, and trusted supply methods.
Okay.
In essence, it's about building a dedicated, global, highly specialized team whose only mission is to produce energy divorced from all other human enterprises.
A singular focus.
Exactly. This community would operate with that singular focus, shielded from the myriad conflicting interests that typically plague global energy discussions.
Building on the creation of this ice gut, the very next point introduces perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of this proposal, how energy would actually function economically.
Point 2, the economics.
Point 2, which is perhaps the most mind-bending, is to get energy supply out of the marketplace entirely. The author introduces the concept of proto-commodity.
Okay, proto-commodity. What does that mean exactly?
So to crystallize this proto-commodity idea, we're talking about energy being supplied without cost at the point of need. Essentially free.
Free energy. That's huge.
Completely disconnected from traditional economic models. That's a radical departure.
That's right. And it's a concept that demands careful consideration because it overturns so much of our current economic thinking. Proto-commodity means this energy is not a commodity yet. It fundamentally cannot be valued or paid for.
Cannot be valued or paid for.
Therefore, it's supplied without cost to any human enterprise that needs energy without exception.
No exceptions. Wow.
The author is very clear this has no traditional ideological underpinning at all. It is not socialist or communist.
So it's purely functional, not ideological.
Its fundamental goal is precisely what you mentioned, to divorce the supply of energy as far as possible from normal day-to-day human activities.
Like air or gravity.
Exactly. Imagine air or gravity. We don't buy or sell the supply of it. We simply breeze it or use its force. The ice gut aims to make energy similarly fundamental and friction-free, divorcing its provision from the inherent complexities and conflicts of human economic and political systems.
Okay, and how is this practically managed?
This supply must come from a network of trusted enterprises with complete ownership, protection, and operation. And most importantly, it must be completely isolated from the rest of the world's economic and political activities.
Complete isolation again.
Ideally with a very small physical footprint. And it's crucial to understand that the ice gut only supplies the energy.
Ah, not distribution.
Right. The distribution, which involves local grids and infrastructure, remains part of normal integrated economic activities, where traditional market forces might still apply.
That's a really important distinction. So the raw energy is free at source, but getting it to your house might still involve local utility costs.
Potentially, yes. The supply is isolated, not necessarily the entire delivery chain.
That's a truly revolutionary shift in its economic implications. The idea of energy becoming a utility on par with air or gravity profoundly changes the foundational economics of, well, everything.
It really does.
Moving to point 3, the author stresses the need for dedicated research and exploration.
Constant improvement.
This means continuous, ongoing, hard research is necessary to ensure the viability, efficiency, and ongoing improvement of this isolated energy supply. It's not a one-and-done project, it's a perpetual scientific endeavor.
Indeed, it implies an ongoing commitment to innovation, to constantly seeking safer, more efficient, and more abundant ways to generate this proto-commodity energy.
Keeping it cutting edge.
This commitment to continuous advancement ensures the system remains optimal and responsive to future needs. Point 4 then emphasizes the fungibility of energy. Fungibility. Like money. Exactly like money. The supply must have no unwarranted moral or political strings attached. It needs to be completely independent with completely fungible energy supply characteristics.
So when we say fungible, like money, it means a kilowatt hour from the ISCUT network is exactly the same, carries the same value,
Yep.
and can be used for any purpose, anywhere, regardless of its origin within the network or the user's political alignment.
Precisely.
There are no green electrons versus dirty electrons, no political strings attached to the energy itself, only maybe to how a community chooses to use that energy.
Right. The energy itself is neutral.
This radical neutrality removes a fundamental lever of control and conflict that often plagues energy geopolitics, right?
Absolutely. It ensures absolute neutrality in energy provision. This fungibility means the energy itself cannot be weaponized or withheld for political or ideological reasons. It's provided universally.
Which is huge.
This brings us to point 5, acknowledging current failures. The author argues that this isolated approach directly overcomes most of the current deadlocks experienced in human thinking around energy.
Deadlocks related to
capital investment and monetary linked solution to energy needs. They challenge us, the listeners, to reflect on the inherently poor performance of most publicized climate change mitigation and human development initiatives, like carbon tax, etc.
Ouch. A critique of current policies.
Yes, a fairly sharp one.
This is crucial because it highlights the author's belief that linking energy supply to traditional economic models and political objectives creates inherent friction and often leads to failure or inefficiency.
That seems to be the argument.
The aim is to decouple energy supply from any ideology or social construct or political objectives while allowing all other normal, actively pursued ideologies and social constructs that humans inherently act out and develop over time to continue.
Let society be society, just give it energy.
It's an attempt to remove a fundamental source of conflict and inefficiency from our most basic human need, rather than trying to force a single ideology onto energy itself.
Exactly. It removes energy as a battleground. Next, point 6, is about creating a global energy actor for all.
Global scale.
The ESCET would operate on a truly global scale, negotiating and freely allocating raw materials, know-how, technology, and work from nature stores for its singular purpose.
How would that work globally?
The author draws a powerful analogy to the independent global commitments of organizations like the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights,
Okay, like this frameworks.
or our existing global monetary system, i.e. the Bretton Woods system, or a new monetary system everyone seems to be looking for in cryptocurrency, who knows?
What's key here, then, is that the ISCA would have only one single imperative to the exclusion of all others.
Just one job.
Ensuring trusted access to abundant heat and electrical energy for any human activity's success. This singular, uncompromised focus is what makes it so powerful and distinct from existing global bodies.
Which often have competing mandates.
Exactly. They're often pulled in many conflicting directions. This simplifies its mission to an almost elemental level.
Indeed. Its singular focus is its strength. And point 7, transparency without control, is fascinating.
Transparency without control. Explain that.
The ISCOT's activities would be completely transparent and open for society-wide communication and openness to all interest groups.
So anyone can see what it's doing.
Yes. This means anyone can see what they're doing, how much energy is being produced, where resources are being allocated. But here's the crucial distinction.
The catch.
While open for viewing, commenting, and requesting energy, it is completely isolated from any direct control of the ISPET's activities.
That's a paradox, isn't it? Transparency without control. For listeners who understand global governance, the idea of an entity operating with such autonomy, isolated from political pressures, seems almost impossible.
It does seem difficult.
What specific mechanisms does the author suggest to truly ensure its independence and prevent external capture or influence? And how does accountability work if there's no direct control?
That's a crucial question. The author states that the only plane of accountability and direct oversight is a break of independent and trusted supply.
So accountability is failure to deliver.
Exactly. If the ISCET fails to deliver on its singular imperative to provide abundant, reliable, cost-free energy, then it is held accountable. Its very existence depends on fulfilling the mandate.
Okay.
This ensures its independence while allowing all other human interests and relationships can maintain their inherent characteristics of trust, harmony, distrust, and conflicts, law and order interpretations of universal human rights, etc.
Society keeps functioning as normal.
The ISCOT simply supplies energy, regardless of any conflicts between individuals and communities or any commercial or state entities, meaning conflicts must be resolved through normal statecraft, contractual, and other legal methods.
It stays out of disputes.
It's the ultimate firewall, providing the fundamental resource while allowing human society to operate as it always has, with its inherent complexities. The only control is its mandate, and the penalty for failure is, presumably, its dissolution or restructuring.
This is where it gets really interesting. Point 8, measuring success purely physical.
No fuzzy metrics.
The author proposes a very specific, almost ruthlessly efficient way to measure the success of this monumental undertaking, one that bypasses traditional economic or political metrics entirely.
How do they measure it then?
The ESCOT operates on the purest set of physical principles, taking human nature into account only to align its actions to its single objective, the same healing nature found in all complex human societies.
Its key metrics for success are purely physical, detached from any financial or political valuation. First,
Metric 1.
a physical increase in the percentage of the total expected global quantity and reach of supply to communities and their enterprises.
Simply, more energy, more places.
Basically, yes.
Sure.
Are we producing more energy, and is it reaching more people? Second,
Metric 2.
an increasing percentage of energy supplied according to the physical theoretical limit of the current optimal baseload energy source being exploited.
pushing for technical efficiency.
Right. Maximum efficiency and technical excellence in energy production. It's a simple goal. Ever-increasing and ever-improving energy supply as its only measure of success.
What about making too much?
The author also notes the potential oversupply of energy should not be considered a disadvantage because the ISCOT is isolated.
Okay.
It can transparently but independently plan and control the oversupply capacity and deploy stored generation units based on economic signals received and transparently interpreted from the networked economic actors.
So it can manage surplus internally.
It's about physical abundance, not market scarcity.
And this leads directly to point 9, why nuclear baseload is optimal.
The nuclear question.
The author states that nuclear fission is currently the optimal baseload source with future potential for nuclear fusion. This is a bold claim, given public perception.
It certainly is. This raises an important question about public perception versus the technical realities, which the author directly addresses.
How do they justify it?
The author explains that nuclear energy requires the smallest physical volume of resources, having the smallest impact on our current global store of resources compared to other energy sources.
Energy density is key.
Consider that a single kilogram of uranium fuel can release as much energy as, 3 million kilograms of coal. This incredible energy density translates directly to minimal land use, reduced transportation logistics, and a significantly smaller ecological footprint for the physical infrastructure needed.
Making it ideal for this isolated system.
Ideal for an isolated high-output system.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author suggests a new framework for managing the inherent risks and benefits of nuclear power.
How so?
Instead of expecting all of humanity to achieve perfect moral and ethical fidelity in managing dangerous materials, which is maybe unrealistic.
Right.
You isolate the nuclear energy activities into a community of trust that is completely independent but also completely open for review by all.
Strict, transparent, professional management within the ISCOT.
Exactly. They also mention the abundance of nuclear fission fuel, uranium, thorium, even legacy spent fuel, and the suitability of modern modular technologies.
And they mention weapons material.
Interestingly, yes. The ISCAP might even use large amounts of legacy nuclear fissile materials extracted from discontinued nuclear weapons, turning a global threat into a peaceful resource.
That's a powerful repurposing of existing materials. Point 10, shining light on fossil fuels. It's quite direct.
What's the verdict on fossil fuels?
The ISCOT success will systematically displace fossil fuels' energy component as soon and as aggressively as possible for the sake of our biosphere's survival. This is a clear mission.
Displacement, not immediate ban, but aggressive displacement.
The author uses a powerful analogy here describing fossil fuels used for energy as an isolated cancer to be eradicated by clean energy supply chemotherapy.
Wow, another very strong metaphor.
It's a stark metaphor for a decisive transition. However, they make a crucial distinction.
Oh, not all fossil products.
Right. Fossil minerals, carbon-based products not intended to burn, like plastics, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, countless other industrial applications.
Materials, not fuels.
Exactly. They still have extraordinary beneficial potential, especially when proto-commodity energy is abundant and cost-free.
The clean energy input.
It allows for the extreme reduction of carbon emissions in the processes that manufacture these materials, as the energy input itself is clean. So it's not a complete eradication of all fossil-derived products, just specifically their use as an energy source.
That's a very important nuance. Using the molecules, not burning them for heat.
Point 11, rewarding the effort, also challenges conventional economic thinking.
How are the ISCOT people rewarded?
The ISCOT's primary reward is humanity's progress itself. That's the big picture.
Okay, altruistic, but practically.
But the people taking part in it, the specialists and workers, also receive an independently agreed reward, an equitable claim on wealth in the real economy based on the overall success of the ISCOT in delivering energy.
So they get paid based on performance tied to the real economy.
Yes, and from a monetary perspective, this reward could even be the creation of new fiat money or cryptocurrency or any sovereign-trusted new money.
Creating new money. Won't that cause inflation?
The author argues this type of reward will not contribute to inflation due to the ISCOT's intrinsic benefit to the real economy.
How does that work?
By providing energy freely at the point of supply, it inherently lowers the cost of production across all industries, stimulates economic activity, and increases overall wealth,
So it creates more value than the money it represents.
thereby offsetting any new money creation. It's a bold proposal for a new economic model for a specific sector, designed to integrate seamlessly and beneficially with existing economies.
A non-inflationary reward mechanism tied to real value creation. Interesting.
And finally, point 12, internal competition for success. Even within this isolated, unified system,
There's competition.
it allows for internal forms of competitive exploration for better methods of supply.
How is that structured? It's envisioned to operate less like a traditional corporation and more like a purely scientific, peer-review community of specialists searching and executing this single imperative.
Like academia, almost.
A bit like that, yes. This means different teams or sub-entities within the ISCOD could compete to develop the most efficient reactor designs, the safest waste disposal methods, or the most effective energy conversion technologies.
Driving innovation internally.
This ensures continuous innovation and improvement within the isolated structure, driven by scientific rigor and the singular goal of maximizing energy supply.
So when we pull all these 12 points together, what does this all mean? It sounds like a blend of public service, cutting-edge scientific endeavor, and almost a new form of economic incentive, all wrapped into one, completely dedicated to energy supply.
Fundamentally separate from conventional markets.
And yet fueling them. It's a non-utopian, pragmatic solution for a specific, critical problem.
Indeed, it's designed to be a highly specialized, focused engine for energy production, insulated from the complexities and conflicts of human society, yet serving its most fundamental need.
Now, with such a radical, hybrid, non-utopian proposal, what does the author anticipate will be the effects if this idea were to be implemented on a global scale?
The consequences, good and bad.
They don't shy away from the challenges, starting with resistance and duress.
Right, the author fully anticipates resistance and rejection by some or even most of society. It's not going to be easy.
Why such resistance expected?
They draw a compelling parallel to history, suggesting that such profoundly transformative ideas are often only accepted under extreme duress and real existential fear of destruction.
Like after major crises.
Think about the creation of the United Nations after World War II, or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or even the Bretton Woods monetary system. These weren't adopted in times of peace and plenty,
No, they came out of conflict.
but forged in the crucible of global catastrophe. The author's hope, however, is to implement this before another apocalypse, not after it's already ravaged humanity.
That's a sobering thought that humanity often only truly unites in the face of existential threat. Hopefully we can learn faster this time.
That seems to be the plea.
This leads to effect 2, implementation in silos. The ISOT might initially be phased in as part of the fear experienced by nation-states, regions, or civilizational trust communities.
Not a global Big Bang rollout, then.
Perhaps a desperate measure by a failing state or a group of like-minded nations first.
That's a realistic assessment. But true success and network efficiency, the author stresses, will only come when ISCOD delivers its energy detached from all human fears and power relations,
True independence is key.
with universal commitment to its independence and isolation. It's a journey, not an overnight switch, and it requires a fundamental shift in trust and cooperation on a global scale,
Moving beyond fear.
moving from a localized, fear-driven adoption to a universal, rational acceptance of its independent role.
Effect 3 is where the real societal transformation begins. A clear focus on what to do with energy.
The positive outcomes.
With abundant proto-commodity energy, enterprises can finally focus on actual human and environmental issues other than energy supply,
Freeing up resources and brain power.
irrespective of the ideological methods to be used. This is about unlocking human potential, isn't it?
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is about unlocking an unimaginable amount of human potential and creativity.
What kind of things become possible?
Imagine the innovations, the solutions, the sheer human ingenuity that could be unleashed if energy scarcity simply wasn't a concern. The author states that free energy removes a significant obstacle to new and ambitious enterprises,
Lowering barriers to entry.
leading to immeasurable large-scale economic opportunities and exponential growth of new job creation. Think about water scarcity. Desalination becomes economically viable on a massive scale,
Transforming deserts, providing water.
transforming arid regions into fertile lands and ensuring clean drinking water for billions. Or agricultural innovation, vertical farms, climate-controlled environments requiring enormous power
Could become widespread.
could proliferate, ensuring food security independent of traditional land limitations and even specific climates. Even space exploration takes on a new dimension.
How so?
Imagine the energy required to mine asteroids for rare earth metals or establish off-world colonies. Suddenly, those aren't just sci-fi dreams, but engineering challenges with abundant proto-commodity energy as a fundamental enabler.
And what about our environmental cleanup efforts? The author implies that protecting nature and reversing past damage becomes economically attractive.
Exactly. Many pollution reduction strategies are currently too expensive because of the immense energy input required.
Energy is the bottleneck.
If energy is essentially free at the source, activities like large-scale atmospheric carbon capture, extensive ecosystem restoration, advanced waste recycling,
Things we struggle with now.
and even industrial-scale conversion of pollutants into useful materials become economically feasible. It transforms them from costly necessities into highly valued industries and services.
Wow.
It fundamentally reprices the cost of environmental stewardship, making it not just a moral imperative, but an economic opportunity.
So it enables.
It means realizing good living for all on Earth, enabling large-scale initiatives currently only in our imagination, like cleaning up all our oceans, greening deserts, or truly protecting endangered species on a scale never before possible.
Effect 4, life goes on, even more so, suggests a continuity that's crucial to the non-utopian nature of this proposal.
Right, it's not changing everything.
Only vested interests in energy supply are disconnected. All other interests associated with any potential use of energy will remain in the sphere of day-to-day human activities of wealth creation, trust, or disputes.
Human nature persists.
It's not a complete societal overhaul, just a fundamental shift in one absolutely crucial area, allowing everything else to continue to evolve naturally.
That's right. The author isn't proposing a perfect world without conflict or competition. Instead, by removing the primary economic and geopolitical friction point of energy,
Takes one big problem off the table.
it allows those other human dynamics, whether they are about wealth creation, cultural expression, or even inevitable disputes to unfold, perhaps with less destructive potential because a fundamental resource is no longer a battleground.
And effect 5. Legacy energy interest can become the artificial sun, offers a surprisingly pragmatic path for existing energy industries.
What happened to the oil and gas giants?
The author suggests that the entire fossil fuel industry has an opportunity to be absorbed into the ISCOT's influence, potentially becoming major and most committed enablers.
Absorbed, not destroyed.
Regardless of their current scale or investment, this is a very shrewd political and economic move.
It truly is. This foresight allows for a realistic absorption of legacy energy interest into a new isolated sphere of accountability.
A transition path.
Instead of an antagonistic relationship where traditional energy companies fight against the transition, this proposal offers them a new, vital role within the ISCOT,
Using their expertise.
leveraging their expertise, infrastructure, and workforce for the new energy paradigm. It turns potential adversaries into essential partners, focusing their vast resources and knowledge on the singular mission of energy abundance.
Effect 6. Anarchic, unpredictable humanity still exists is a powerful reminder that this is explicitly not a utopian vision.
Still messy.
Human conflict will still happen because of clashes of interests other than energy supply. The author acknowledges that this proposal doesn't solve all of humanity's problems.
And that's its strength, actually. The author argues that such conflicts, while often painful, are frequently channeled towards extreme progress in technology, culture, aesthetics, and most of the highest human aspirations.
Conflict as a driver, but maybe less destructive.
By removing energy scarcity as a primary driver of conflict, humanity's innate anarchic nature, its unpredictable drive for competition and innovation, can perhaps be redirected towards more constructive pursuits.
Okay.
The non-utopian nature means our actual human nature will still happen in the normal, deliberately conscious, cooperative, unpredictable, anarchic, realistic, evil, but ultimately life-sustaining and loving way.
We stay human.
The energy supply simply returns to the same sphere of abundance and the fungible form humanity has experienced when the energy from the sun was the only large-scale energy source. It's about removing a fundamental constraint, not perfecting human nature.
So what does this all mean for us? It's not about creating a perfect world or a world without challenges,
Look, no magic wand.
but about removing one fundamental friction point, energy scarcity and its associated conflicts, so humanity can focus its energies elsewhere.
On inherent creativity, grand aspirations.
Even channel its conflicts into more productive avenues of progress. It's a remarkably grounded yet visionary approach.
And finally, effect 7, human energy for human purposes. This is a very distinct philosophical point.
What's the philosophy here?
Nature's own energy systems, like solar, wind, and gravitational energy effects, can, and in my mind, should be dedicated to nature's own purposes within all natural habitats, not for human consumption.
Wow. So leave solar and wind to nature.
That's the implication. This raises an important question. It's a very distinct philosophical stance, suggesting that human flourishing shouldn't come at the cost of depleting or disrupting nature's own energy flows or processes.
Humans should generate their own power independently.
The author is skeptical of humans stealing from nature for energy if the goal is perfect balance with nature. The implicit objective is for humanity to supply energy newly created for new human activities,
Separating our needs entirely.
effectively isolating its energy needs from the biosphere and allowing nature to flourish independently, powered by its own sun.
That's a profound rethinking of sustainability.
It's a call for humanity to take full responsibility for its own energy needs, rather than relying on natural processes that are vital for the rest of the planet's ecosystems.
Become energetically independent from Earth systems.
It suggests that true harmony with nature comes not from using its energy, but from creating our own, freeing nature to exist purely for its own sake, powered by its original sun. It's a profound reevaluation of humanity's place in the natural world.
What a journey we've taken today. We've unpacked a truly hybrid, non-utopian idea that challenges our narratives of progress,
Right.
identifies energy as a profound moral imperative, and proposes a radical artificial sun solution through the ISCA.
It covers a lot of ground.
This vision seeks to redefine our relationship with energy, address pressing global challenges head-on, and empower human potential, all while taking humanity as it is, flaws, complexities, and all.
It's a complex, multi-layered proposal that insists on pragmatism and realism about human nature, while simultaneously maintaining an optimistic belief in humanity's capacity for healing, cooperation, and immense progress.
If we remove the right obstacles.
When fundamental external constraints like energy scarcity are strategically removed, it's a blueprint for a future where energy is no longer a source of conflict, but a boundless enabler of human endeavor.
So a final thought for you, our listeners. If abundant, cost-free energy were no longer a constraint for humanity, if the ISCA were a reality,
What would we do?
what grand challenges would you envision us tackling first that currently seem impossible? How would your view of human progress change if energy scarcity was relegated to the history books?
A lot to think about there.
Keep those thoughts flowing, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.